In the meantime, what's happening, I got a call from Dilma Rousseff that she wanted me to come to her inauguration. And this is before she imploded. I know we're not going to write a lot about her, but it's a context.
Yeah. You were in St. Croix, right, when you went from...
Yeah. And so, but I got the invitation earlier.
Okay.
So I had been working like hell to overcome the Snowden stuff.
Right.
And we started to actually make some real comments. If you'll make a note, in my book, if you make a note, I will too. When did she use the phrase, we're not married yet, but we're dating? He's
Oh, yeah. Seductive.
We're not
Yeah.
married. It relates to timing.
Okay. I actually have that clip in my laptop.
Okay, well, I'm trying to remember when it was. You know what I
Okay,
mean?
yeah.
So, because it'll sort of give me a point, counterpoint piece of what was going on. So, we were so I'd been working that hard.
I can't believe you made that trip in... I didn't realize till I looked at the schedule. You made that trip in a day. Right. So she made the comment at a dinner just before the World Cup last year. So that would have been in World Cup probably summer of 2014. So she'd already said that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've been working it real hard. And the other thing, I was through the month of November working real hard on had we passed ACA? We had we?
Yeah. That looks like 2013.
Yeah, this is 13. 11014. Okay.
So that's still a year or too early for us.
We're 15. That's
Yeah.
what I'm thinking here. Well, actually, here's
There's 115.
yeah. Okay, this is November of 14. Just get my.
Okay.
I was working a lot with Ukraine and with
Mm-hmm.
on
He was
energy.
the energy guy, right?
Energy. And it was about whether or not they were going to cut off oil, and about how Ukraine had to change their oil subsidy to a market system. Here's what I meant in my card. I still do it.
Oh.
So in order to get IMF loans, they had to move more to a market economy because they were way, way off, and had to deal with corruption in the energy sector. So, and they owed Russia about $3.6 billion, and in back energy cost.
It was natural gas that
Natural
Russia's
gas.
selling into
There was
that.
some oil too,
Okay.
some coal, but it was mainly gas.
Okay.
And what I was working really hard on was getting other countries to engage in reverse flow of their pipelines so they
Okay.
could flow to Ukraine. And the IMF was the subsidy. They were subsidizing the cost of energy 81%.
This is over and above the loans.
Back up. The Ukrainian government
Mm-hmm.
was having Ukrainian people pay so little for the gas they were getting. They were subsidized to the tune of 81%, the people,
Okay.
not the government, the people. And so, for example, you'd ride through rural parts of Ukraine,
Mm-hmm.
and it'd be 12, 15, 20 degrees, and the windows are wide open in their homes, for real. IMF said they had to phase in a government tariff. But the gas deal they had no real European assurances that they'd be part of the deal. And then on the 26th and 14th, we're talking about ISIL increasing pressure on Assad. And I had a discussion with the Turks. General Allen, was going to go see. Details not that important.
Okay. Okay.
And I had Davutoglu, who was then the prime minister, and and President Erdogan. I tried to expand on the 8 points. What were the 8 points? I can't remember. and copper.
Having been burned by Libya, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Position is
Okay.
uh, um, uh, uh, with
Yeah.
with the
Okay.
um, uh,
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Awesome. as they started grabbing
Right.
land, they were grabbing
That was
oil
a big
fields.
argument.
Right.
Did they send the speeches to? All right. What was I gonna ask you? Something else. Oh gosh. I can't think what it is. Thanks.
Something quality?
Yeah.
I can't.
Some of this may be classified, so be careful with it.
Okay.
I'm not sure. It's not more classified, but.
Mm-hmm. Interesting, that date is 11/26/14,
Yeah.
and that's a day you were in Nantucket. So do you get like fed into a situation room
Yeah.
meeting?
Yeah.
Yes.
They set up a secure.
Okay, so actually in the Thanksgiving trip you were at.
By the way, on the 26th, I had a long call with Arseny Yatsenyuk. He told me they'd formed a government. They'd agreed on a new speaker and an agenda. He said, I'm, quote, keeping my commitment to you that you asked me to do on our ride to the airport. Remember I talked about the ride to the airport?
Yeah.
I thanked him for following through.
And that was about
That was
corruption and.
that was about that was specifically about sticking with Poroshenko.
Okay.
and not calling for elections and not campaigning separately, campaigning
Okay.
together.
Right. So they had formed this essentially
they formed-
coalition government.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And then on the
And that's the day, and that was also reported the day after that. That's when they announced they were doing away with the old neutral policy and heading toward EU.
yeah, that could
Yeah.
be. That wasn't what I asked him, but that's what they
But that's all.
were doing. And then on the 2nd of December, we had a discussion about Turkey and the Russian pipeline with Hochstein at 11:45. What was going on was the Russians were now they were kind of bribed the Turks with what they call South Stream.
Okay.
That all the oil coming out of Russia would come down through the Caspian and into Turkey and use that as a hub. It would come from the eastern. It would come from Azerbaijan. I almost called the Turkish minister to see if this was the deal, because it would have real impact on whether or not we could get a deal with Cyprus. Cyprus and Israel had found these caches of oil. Gas, natural gas. What I was trying to work is an agreement whereby Hochstein and I were trying to work with the Turks to say, okay, why don't you make a deal with Cyprus?
Okay.
Get a unity government there in Cyprus, and the end result will be you'll have access to all that gas. The gas will go to you, you'll be secure, and you'll be a conduit into Greece and the rest of the world. That's what was being discussed. Now,
Was that
Turks-
completely separate from the question of Ukraine's natural
yes,
gas?
completely separate. But they all are tied.
Yeah, because there's one market.
There's one market. And so what happens is, what they're worried about is if Russia, instead of going through Ukraine, came down through Turkey, through Azerbaijan, it would cost the Ukrainians $10 billion a year in lost revenue. Okay?
Okay.
And a secure access to gas. But the Turks had to the Russians had to get their gas east. So they came up with South Stream to go below Ukraine, cut them out.
Right.
And at the same time, that's all energy is fungible. At the same time, what was going on is that Israel had found this new gas supplies in their territory, as had Greece. Now, Turkey was arguing that as did Cyprus. Turkey was arguing that it wasn't Cypriot gas, but under the UN resolution, it is within Cyprus's geographic boundaries and border, and they were threatening to send ships in to block the exploration and the rest. So what I had underway, it looked promising until the Russians came along to try to fuck it up, was to say, look, work out a deal, let the Turks and the Greeks on Cyprus work out a deal, which you end up pulling out off the island over time, a unified government, bi-communal, bi-zonal. They can then cut a deal with you, because they're part of the EU, they can cut a deal with you to get all the gas you want, because it's illogical to go up north to supply Europe through Turkey.
Right.
Okay? And so so for the Turks, that was like, God, that's great. Ooh, fuck me, we're going to be a major player again.
Right.
We'll have energy.
Right.
And then the Russians come along and say, no. We'll make you the hub. All the Russian gas, instead of going through Ukraine, will come down through you. It was called South Stream.
Okay. And the Russian reserves. The Russian gas is much more than what they were going to be able to pull out of Cyprus, likely.
No, not really.
Oh, really?
There's a lot of gas. But there would be plenty from Cyprus. But what it was Russia had no other way to get their gas to Europe. So, so call the Turkish administration and say, hey, have you guys made a deal? And they rope-a-dope and said, not yet. They haven't. And I put, then Jordan, if we allowed the deal to go through in the Eastern Mediterranean, that'd be $4.8 billion would go forward with Israel. The meetings went well. This is a case where Jordan is looking to Israel now and saying, hey, look, we need gas, we need oil. And it's really easy to connect a pipeline right through Israel. The cost of that pipeline would be $4.8 billion. And in 2012, the Sinai pipeline to Israel and Jordan was bombed, and it's been out. 10 months there had been, let me see. It's about the timing. The final deal, $14 billion over the next 10 years of offshore Israeli gas. So, and this would also, I remember this. There was a big discussion earlier that there would be oil in the Dead Sea. And so, and Syria was trying to get in the game too. So the question was whether or not this had been an Arab pipeline, whether or not the Israeli gas had gone on an Arab pipeline, which included, here's what we need to do, which included Egypt. So there was an Arab pipeline that had been envisioned. And so what this whole idea was so the Arab pipeline was this idea that there was talk of going, instead of the option was that the Greeks would sell the oil, the Cypriots would build a pipeline down to Egypt.
Okay.
And Egypt would go under the Red Sea, tie into existing pipelines and tie Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, and Egypt together in what we're going to call the Arab pipeline.
Okay.
And at the same time, this was going on the 2nd. Was I back in the 2nd?
Yeah, back in.
I didn't think they were doing nearly enough, and they should have been able to put in all. We've been through this. We
Right.
know how to handle domestic violence,
Right.
but it's like the universities. They all start like we hadn't learned anything, or we
Right.
hadn't set anything up.
Right. So it's a whole new institution,
A
and
whole
they
new
won't.
institution.
They have
And
to
I argued
fight.
that they should be able to go beyond the command. In other words, the commanding general should be. But I lost that. Then we went back to Brazil, and there was this whole focus, a report by Jack Lew about Brazil's economy. Pritzker had just been down there. And again, you don't want to get into it, but this whole big thing about what was going to happen to Brazil's economy and Brazil's exports. And basic problems in Brazil, weak education reform through views, TTP, dialogues and working group. We had set up, this was, now I have 1/115 written for this.
Okay.
This was my brief to going down to, and I brought Lou and company with me, to set up a working groups with, after her. What I did was, I argued that we should, before her inauguration and after we did meet, we should set up working groups on the economy and education, a whole range of other things. And so Pritzker was with me, so was Jack Lew. And we talked about why we should become better trade partners. We talked about macroeconomic policy to discuss structural and financial sector measures, trade and investment, etc. And so Pritzker set up a U.S.-Brazil CEO forum, talking about TPP and TTIP, and work beyond Mercosur, MERCOSUR. That is the economic, that's like the EU for Southern. We talked about commercial relationships, and we talked about foreign direct investment and all these issues, education. And then we set up dialogues in a working group on the economy and commercial relations with the Secretary of Treasury, science and technology innovation with the Secretary of Energy, bilateral, regional, and global issues with the Secretary of State, defense and security with the Secretary of Defense, people to people with the State Department, public diplomacy and other exchanges. And then we discussed they wanted to become part of TPP. Remaining focus is for them to become part of it, they had to deal with international intellectual property, environment, state-owned enterprises, and investment and financial services. Bilaterally, they want to talk about market access and between us and agricultural in terms of government procurement. The next round would be in the U.S. on the 26th to the 1st of February, 26th of January. The final ministerial meeting for us to decide whether they could be part of TP was going to be March 6th to 8th with Japan. They were hardening their position on automobiles, and we're prepared to spend a new proposal on autos. Brazil, one of the most protective markets in the world, high tariffs, complex tax system, regulatory regime, reliance on localization measures mean you got to buy and sell local in the market, industrial policy, etc. And I went through all the problems. Objective was restart all the dialogues, including the CEO dialogue and the presidential dialogues and the CEO dialogue. Reason she is meeting with me and doing this, it helps her politics with the business community, and until now, their deliverable was her just showing up. The lingering issues were the Defense Cooperation Agreement, more interaction between our militaries, General Secretary of the Military Information Agreement, shared technical classified information, open skies for civil aviation and peaceful use of space. They're all being discussed. Now on the 6th, I'm opening up the Mexico. Where am I on the 6th? This is really a busy time. Okay, this one opened up the Mexico high-level dialogue. Met with Peña Nieto. This is in Washington. And I broke off at 11:45 because I had to swear in the new Senate on the 6th. And then I also, that day, I went to, it was a big deal to him, I went to the unveiling of the portrait of Representative Conyers in the, so that's what I did. The next day, the thing I did a whole lot, but it was basically there was a principals committee meeting in the SEC, but I swore in Mark Gilbert, who had been helpful in our campaigns, ambassador to Australia. To New Zealand. And I did some other swearing-ins. The next day, now, it's a new Congress, and I was also the point man with the Congress. So Kevin McCarthy wanted to meet with me privately, and we did that afternoon. I believe we got at the Naval Observatory. Um, and then I dropped by later that night at the United, the UFCW, commercial workers, food and commercial workers,
Right.
Joe Hansen. I dropped by a reception they had. And again now, the next day, I went down to San Antonio. I went to Knoxville, Tennessee, and Clinton, Tennessee, and San Antonio, Texas. And what was I doing? I spoke at a community college to 450 people in Pillissippi State Community College. Then
That wasn't the Techmer trip, was it?
it may have been Wheels Up. I then was went to San Diego, from 6:40 to 7:40, remarks at the Student Veterans of America Convention I spoke. So again, back to the large picture.
Can we?
During this period, I was doing a lot of stuff on Mexico,
Yep.
and with the high-level dialogues, and trying to work out energy and connectivity. And then
Can we back up for a second
Yeah.
to the 5th of January? And can we spend some time on that? Yeah.
I had all those presidential notes.
I know you gave me this much from the
Actually,
separate from presidential.
I wonder where those.
Do you have separate notebooks of the?
Yeah. After every lunch,
Mhm.
I would dictate to. I'd call in,
Mhm.
and I'd dictate to her what the lunch was about. And I think you called her. I had all those at the house in a safe. I don't know what they made me do with them. But what I'd do, I'd make up a card,
Mhm.
one of those little cards of mine. Before I'd have lunch, I'd meet with Steve and anything anybody thought I should be bringing up on our agenda. And then and I'd come back and I'd dictate notes
Okay.
as to what actually transpired at the lunch. So this is, I must have met with Klain.
The only thing I saw possible that day was maybe the early morning at Navob's or something.
Oh, did I? on the 4th, at 2 o'clock,
Mm-hmm.
I think I went to So I think I went to that memorial service in Wilmington. It says December the 4th, but I don't know what this means. Memorial service gets names really fucked up. So it says memorial service for, I don't think her name was, I forget. So I gotta make a note of that too. But at any rate, back to, I had a meeting with Ron Klain, and I don't know when. During this period, remember, we talked about it earlier, we're focusing on what we're doing substantively, but during this period, there was a lot of discussion and mounting pressure from my own team that I announced,
Right.
and that I couldn't delay it much longer. And Ron Klain was making the case how I would run, because I was arguing that, and it was true, that there was disappointment on the part of Democrats in Barack's not being more aggressive about
Right.
a lot of things. And Hillary was criticizing him, she was out by now, and others were criticizing him. And this is where this came in. Ron's advice was that I should actually do a speech to put all of them on, he said, scattered tacks in their path,
Mm-hmm.
by talking about what we've done, be much more aggressive about, while they're talking about how much they changed their approach to the economy from Obama. He said, here's why they're wrong. He said the speech topic suggests, he said, aggressively defend the president, throw thumbtacks in their path, frame the box for the others who are running, one they can't get out of. This will allow me to define the middle class, so challenge without naming Hillary or others,
Right.
and it will challenge the Democratic critics of Hillary, critics including Hillary. In other words, make the case for Obama. Make the case that basically says, I'll take the blame for every mistake we made as long as you give me all the credit too. And we did a great job, challenged Democratic critics, including Hillary. The other piece of that was, we had decided, and Mike's idea was, and Ron was still loyal in those days, was was to say, because he came in to see me and I took extensive notes. I don't know where the hell they are. Mike's idea was, look, this is what we've done, and I'm proud of it. And I'll take credit for it if you bet. I'll take blame and credit. But this is what I'm going to do from here.
Right.
Instead of going after what we didn't do.
Right.
And what they were doing. The others saying, well, you know, if I were Barack, I would have done more in the economy. Well, I was a really lonely voice on housing. I was a lonely voice on the middle class. I mean, I thought we should be much more aggressive than putting these guys in jail and the bankers. I mean, for real. It wasn't idle. I mean, he used to really get pissed at me. And I stopped doing it.
Barack used to get pissed.
Oh, yeah, really pissed.
Yeah.
Because I think the reason he didn't do it was I think he does buy this argument of the moral hazard. You know, like you went out and took a risk.
Right.
I remember getting a briefing from his economic team saying to me that, well, I didn't understand, this is not the middle class of post-World War II. These are all greedy bastards. They all went out and borrowed money on these crazy cockamamie loans because they wanted a fifth bedroom, they wanted a swimming pool, they wanted a place at the beach. Right. Bullshit. You know, that's what the new middle class was. And they're part of it. The millennials. That's what they. Anyway, that was the constant fight with me. Klain was on my side when he was there. And my whole team was all. I had the team that said, including the two guys who I think were with me were, oh God, the guy at Princeton now, the economist, good guy, was our chief economic advisor. Not Kaufman, think of his name, and the guy back out at the University of Chicago with a funny name. I'll think of it.
Goolsby is one.
Goolsby.
Yeah, Goolsby is in Chicago.
And the other guy's at Princeton.
Yeah.
We should write the names down so I don't keep forgetting.
Is it Alan Kruger?
Alan Kruger, great guy, by the way. And a big fan, a big supporter. So, we were on the same team along with, my team, my internal staff. But it was constant. I think the reason why we didn't do more, by the way, is because I think that, it's a harsh thing to say, but I think subconsciously at least, Barack and his guys were beholden to Silicon Valley.
Right.
And the Valley guys didn't want this shit that I wanted to,
They want free reign out there.
Yeah, and the other thing was that there was the guy who was a big Barack supporter early on is Jamie Dimon.
Yeah.
And Jamie Dimon was part of the people who should have gone to jail. But,
well, Jamie Dimon is the architect of the Clinton, Glass-Steagall.
Yeah.
He's the whole ballgame.
Right.
Yeah.
And so there was Jamie Dimon.
And he was always part of that team, right, of advisors, outside advisors that Barack had. Yeah.
And even though we weren't, quote, tied to Wall Street bankers, we were pretty well tied to Wall Street bankers.
Right.
And
Summers was always.
And Summers came to me and said he was wrong after
we
got, came to me and says, I was wrong about the housing piece. I should have been much more aggressive. We should have given more leeway. We should have, which was really something else. And when he came to me, and I'll get the date, remind me, when did Summers come to me to have lunch? It was when I was thinking about running.
Okay.
Um,
Because Summers is not a guy who's known for
No,
admitting to
no.
mistakes.
no.
Well, it is
Um,
that also the
Here's what happened, before I forget, don't mind my train of thought. He also pledged to support me in 2016.
Summers did.
Yeah. Now, part of the reason for that was Barack had promised him the Fed, and I thought he should have appointed him to the Fed. And Barack backed off the agreement, backed off that promise, Larry. And it really, really pissed Larry off. He was going to be appointed to the Fed.
Because Larry was too much of a
liability.
yeah.
It was, Harvard and women, and
Yeah.
but it was he just didn't. Any rate, so the context. No, tell them another 10 minutes. Okay.
Okay.
Tell them 15 minutes, so I'll have a chance to read. Tell them I'm in meetings, okay, still? Anyway, so the issue was, this is all, all this is happened simultaneously. The issue was about running for president, which is still very present in everything we're doing, it was that how would I handle the fact that I disagreed with him?
Right.
Well, and Ron he's very good. I'm so disappointed he was so disloyal. That was really hurt my feelings. I mean, it disappointed me about him.
Yeah.
I don't think he's happy.
Yeah.
I know he knows better.
Right.
I know he, like even that email that got exposed, remember?
Yeah, I couldn't quite understand what he was saying.
What
to
he was
tell you the
saying was,
truth.
I can't continue to play this double role.
Yeah.
Because now he's talking me out of running. He went from go. He's still being invited to our meetings. He's going, I don't know, maybe a little late. While at the same time, he already
his Hillary debate. Yeah.
And
right.
Now here's what I think happened. I think what happened was, I think Ron, knowing me, concluded that I wouldn't go.
Mm-hmm.
And that if he stayed with me, that he would lose his chance
Right.
to be part of this new administration, which he wanted. But I still think he thought I would have been better, but he knew that I
Right.
and would probably end up not doing it, and he'd be left hanging.
Uh-huh.
So instead of having the nerve to come to me and say, look, I want to be involved, I'm loyal to you, but I don't think you're going to do it. If you can tell me you're going to do it now, I'll stay.
Right.
But if you can't, I have to take advantage of this opportunity.
Yeah.
Which is what I would have done, you would have done to me.
Right.
He didn't have the courage to do it.
Right. Right.
Steve had the same opportunities, Mike had the similar opportunities, but they didn't do that. They
Right.
stayed.
Right.
So I don't try to sell them on cutting him any slack, because they stuck it out.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was the context of this. How would I run? And so the discussions that revolved around what the strategy would be if I did run.
Mm-hmm.
You with me?
Yep.
And it was less at that point, was I going to announce at that time? It was more at that point, how was I going to run?
Right.
So what I was saying to these guys, looking back on it, what I was saying to them was, look guys, I don't know that I'm going to go, but let's move like you're going to go.
Right.
Put together the plan this is a really important point. Put together the plan that would allow me to win the nomination and be elected president. But what I'm not prepared to do, I'm not prepared to ask other people to commit
Right.
and then box themselves in. Now, I shouldn't have thought that way. I should have thought, fuck him, but I was worried. I didn't want, as a matter of honor, to have people do what Ron ended up doing.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
I didn't want to get them locked in and then deciding, and if I didn't go, then go,
Right.
God damn it, I could have,
Yeah.
I could have been a champ.
Yeah.
I could have been a contender.
But the people you were talking to most closely, Steve and Mike,
Yeah, they
basically knew
No,
your
they knew,
situation.
and I think they just didn't know. And by the way, they also knew,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so it was, Steve, by the way, for all his gregariousness and hey, how you doing? Pretty smart guy, pretty insightful guy.
Yeah.
And I think he knew. But the context again throughout this whole period was, okay, my decision in my head was, what was I thinking in January?
Right. Right.
But so, we may be able to do this. But I don't want to get out too far that I put people out on a limb and then it gets sawed off and they're in trouble. But the guys who are willing, who don't have that as their objective, just being in administration, then let's go ahead and decide how we will run.
Right.
And all during this period, Mike's strongest argument for why we would run and win, and it turned out everything he wrote. Have you read some of the stuff? It's
He's
pretty.
talked to me about it.
All right,
Yeah.
well, we got to get the memos. Turned out to be
Right.
what it was, including her weaknesses and my strengths.
The care, but also the authenticity, the
Yeah.
looking for something real.
But he said, look, he kept coming back to this one thing. This race, no matter how you cut it, is going to be about the middle class. You are the single most authentic person in the United States of America and American politics that authentically can speak to the middle class. No one doubts that it's anything other than who you are. No one doubts that it's something that you have been focused on from the day you ran for office. And you are the embodiment of that. And the middle class gets it. All those folks out there, they look at you and say, yes, he knows my problem. Right. And so how did you deal with the middle class who were the ones still being hurt and not abandon Barack? Well, the way to do that was to say, look what we did now, man.
Right.
Let's understand. That's where I came up with the phrase spontaneously that I said, everything is landed on this man's desk except locusts.
Right.
And it's true.
And it is true. I mean,
is true.
what you guys walked into the first day.
It was astounding.
Yeah.
And look what we did. Now, granted, now we have to go back and from square one begin to build back the middle class. All we did was save you, basically, from depression.
Right.
Save you from being everything go.
Right.
Now, admittedly, what I wasn't focusing on then, I wasn't focusing on, while we were trying to save the economy, how rapidly the economy was changing.
Mm-hmm.
The digitalization issue, the fourth industrial revolution. What was going? I wasn't focused on robots and artificial intelligence and digitalization and Moore's law. I mean, it was all about, and I really believed that, and I still believe it, that we could bring back the manufacturing in America. I didn't think that was lost. And I wasn't so big on globalization. I mean, I wasn't, I thought TPP, the reason I felt, first of all, I think we did not negotiate tough enough on TPP.
Mm-hmm.
But secondly, what I thought was, I thought with TPP, it was more of a foreign policy document
Mm-hmm.
than it was as much a foreign policy document as an economic document. And that we could have been tougher in terms of protecting, you know, getting a better deal for American workers. And I was, for example, even in the foreign policy piece, as recently as the last 4 months we were in office, I was arguing when it comes to China and the South China Sea and air identification zones and the islands they're building in the South China Sea, I argued that we had much more leverage than China had in terms of the need for economic cooperation, and that we should be prepared to threaten economic cooperation. It's cheaper than war, and it hurts us, but it kills them. My argument, and one of the themes I want to get through here in this book as it relates to the foreign policy, domestic side of this, is that I think we always underestimate our power as a nation. I think we always underestimate our power. And
You mean non-military power?
non-military power.
Right.
I think we always underestimate our leverage, including the backup possibility of military power. In other words, that's not the reason. If we didn't have the military power
Right.
to back it up, then all these other things would have less consequence. They would,
Right.
but for example, I finally convinced, I thought I convinced Baragi, that in a situation where we were, if we decided that we were going to really come down on them on steel, which I thought we should have, that it would have a dramatically negative impact on their economy. And if we were decided that we would come down on intellectual property, like for example, we nailed them. They literally stole not only the solar market from us, they stole the technology that this company had that allowed them to produce a more profitable, a more
Efficient, right?
efficient solar power.
Yeah.
I mean, they fucking stole it. And I thought we should have sanctioned them and and every time I'd meet with Xi, I don't want to get off on this, but every time I'd meet with him, my argument would be, look, man, you play by the rules. No problem. You don't want to play by the rules, we impose, the consequence of not paying by the rules. We're going to compete. You want to compete? Fair. You want a different relationship? We got it. It can be new, but it's got to be by rules.
Right.
So if you don't, it's okay if you don't play by the rules. We're going to enforce the sanctions. Well, there was always a reluctance.
Right. You couldn't put any
To do
teeth
that.
behind that.
Yeah, but there were a lot of teeth. But there was worry that we would get hurt more than, because what would happen is we'd say, we're going to come down on solar energy. They say, oh shit, you know what they're going to do? They're going to retaliate against business machines. And God damn it, then we're going to be in a war. Okay, well, so they lose the market in China for business machines. No problem. Let them go somewhere else. Fuck that, They need us. They need our market.
Right.
They need us. But we're never able to. It's a little bit like how it's always harder to do the right thing because it always costs you something.
Right.
It costs something. And there's always the reluctance to take the pain now, even though the pain is, it's hard. Two things. It's hard to prove that if I don't do this, things are going to get worse.
Right.
You do it, things get worse, then they get better, but it's hard to prove that I had not done that, they would have not gotten better.
Right. Yeah, nobody's shown us the alternative.
No, I didn't have the but that's leadership.
Right.
That's what leadership is.
But you also have to make a case.
Yeah, no, you make the case, but lots of times the case doesn't goes down. The case I made, you work at a widget factory, and impose sanctions and they stop buying widgets, well, you don't want to hear this bullshit.
Right.
You know, made the case, you know. But it's the only thing, I mean, that's leadership. And
Yeah.
that's what, that was what Barack was always, and I guess every president, maybe I was a president, I would have not had the nerve to do it too. But it was always on the margins, but it was, you know, like I said, between you and me, I mean, Barack always got to the right spot, but a day late and a dollar short.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's not all the time, but he got, anyway, I should take this call.
Yeah.